Hi, everybody. Welcome to the middle grade 2024 debut panel. This is the first one of 2024 for middle grade, and we have a lot of great books to talk about today. And the whole middle grade lineup for 2024 is going to be really fabulous. So I'm very excited to kick it off with this panel. If you don't know who I am, my name's Lily. I'm the book reviewer person behind Utopia State of Mind on the internet. So now we're going to have our panelists introduce themselves. And just as a kind of warning, I guess, we are going to be opening it up to questions if anyone has any. So if you do at any point during the live, please put them in the chat, and then we can make sure to come back to the questions later at the end, towards the end for the live questions. Mary, do you want to start with the intros?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Mary Abeling, and my book is The Curse of Eelgrass Bog. It just came out from Penguin Kids on January 2nd, so she's just a little over a month old now. And it's about a girl called Kes who is desperately trying to save her parents' a natural history museum.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Therese, the author of Free Period. It's a middle grade story of friendship and period equity, where some best friends fight for maxi pads in all student bathrooms for all students who menstruate. It's full of bestie banter, wildly weird crafts like crochet uteruses, and delightfully disgusting desserts. And it'll be out on March 5th, just under a month from Scholastic. And I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you, Lily.
Hey everyone, my name is Allie Millington. I'm a middle grade and picture book author. My first middle grade book is called Olivetti, and it comes out with Macmillan Publishers on March 26th. And it is told from the unique perspectives of a typewriter who decides to type back and an introverted boy named Ernest.
Hi, everybody. My name is Netta Lures. My debut, Daughters of the Lamp, comes out in about a week from Putnam Young Readers. It's my middle grade debut. It's about a 12-year-old Egyptian-American girl named Sahara who's very logical and likes an explanation for everything and visits her family in Egypt for the first time. And everything goes haywire and realizes that the women in her family are the protectors of Ali Baba's magical treasure.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nashay Jones, and I share a book birthday with Mary's book, The Curse of Eelgrass Bog. My book is called Courtesy of Cupid, and it is a middle grade rom-com, and it's a rivals to more kind of with a touch of magical realism in it.
So I want to start off with a question because we're talking a little bit about published and also soon to be published books. So I would love to know what pieces of advice have you gotten which you appreciate or wish you had gotten for those who are already out in the world. Mary, do you want to start? Because your book is also already out in the world.
Sure. I mean, I think the biggest one is just find your people. And I think this is really encompassed by what we're doing right now, is that it's so hard to do this alone. And I think there's a lot of competitiveness that can happen in publishing. And I think the biggest advice I have ever gotten, and I think the most important is and always will be, just, your fellow authors are your friends. They are not your competition, and they are such wealth of knowledge, and it makes the whole process so much more delightful.
The most valuable advice I've gotten is to really focus on what's happening in the market that you're writing in. So for us in middle grade, we get tons of advice that really doesn't apply. That's really for more YA or adult books. We're in a unique position where our readers are very opinionated. They know what they want to read, but they're usually not the people buying the books. That's going to be their parents, librarians, teachers, and school librarians. So for any other middle grade writers out there, I would really focus on that. Talk to your publisher about what they're doing to get into the school and library markets, and maybe give yourself some grace and not have to follow and spend a lot of the resources on things that are more for YA and adult authors who are marketing directly to their buyers.
I think one piece of advice that I found really helpful moving into becoming published is just that your worth is not found in how successful your book is or even how the world receives your work. There's a really good quote in a book called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, which is, if you weren't enough before the gold medal, you won't be enough after it. And to me, that just kind of means finding your value outside of your accomplishments, so just finding joy and fulfillment and purpose in the work of creating and getting to write for audiences like middle grade instead of, kind of banking how you feel about yourself based on your accomplishments or how well your book does.
I love that so much, Allie. I love Bird by Bird. That's a great book for all writers to read. Anne Lamott has such awesome advice. Along those lines, I think also stay true to the story that you're trying to tell, that your heart is trying to tell, because you are going to get a lot of feedback, and it's so important, the feedback, because it really, if it resonates with you, it really helps make your story better. And I know that's been the case for me, but also there were times that I got feedback, particularly on the structure of my story and telling it in a dual POV, which was like, just stick to the, the more modern day story and forget about the story that happens in the past. And that just never sat right with me, because I always knew I wanted to tell this generational story. And that was like the heart of my story. So always keep that in mind. Take the feedback, but ask yourself, am I being true to my story?
All right, you guys have given such great advice. So I guess I'll give a combination of kind of the same things that we've already heard. The first one is that comparison is the thief of joy. And being in the space at being as writers and going through different stages, all of which have multiple doorways and gates that we have to get through and traverse. It's very hard not to compare yourself to other writers on different journeys. And as middle grade authors, it could be even more difficult because it seems like we have a very different journey. It's more of a long haul relationship that we're building with our readers versus like this instantaneous satisfaction that we get, that some other authors would get. So sometimes it feels like we can compare ourselves to other people and feel like maybe I'm a failure, maybe I'm not in the space I need to be in, but everybody gets to their own space in their own time, in their own journey. And success isn't measured by how much you sell your book or what awards it gets. I think success is measured by that child that emails you and tells you that you made them laugh, or you made them cry, or you gave them the confidence to do X, Y, and Z. And as middle grade writers, I think that's the most important thing, our audience, our children that we're writing for.
I think that's a great segue also to my next question, which is kind of what draws you all to the middle grade genre as a whole? And then also, what are some middle grade books that are on your TBR? Allie T, do you want to start?
So I love writing for this age because I think it's like one of the first times you realize that like the grownups don't have all the answers, and you're really going to create your own future. And that could be anything between like your interpersonal relationships to really how you want the world to be. So that could be terrifying, but it could also be empowering. And I think literature can really show us that we're not alone in whatever we're going through, which is so important for the middle grade years. So like in this one, free period, the adults say there's no money for maxi pads in the schools. And the kids like kind of intuitively know that's not right. They can look around and see all the other things that money is being spent on. And so they kind of get this hard lesson that sometimes the grownups running our lives are putting their own priorities over the actual needs of the kids. So in this book, they really get together and take action. So that's another reason I love writing for this age, is because I think it's the first time they can really see the power of collective action. And just the last thing I have to say is this is the funniest age. Like, they are incisive. There are no gloves. Like, they will say a fart joke 1 minute and have like incisive high-level satire the next minute. And just as like a voice-driven writer, I love tapping into that energy as a storyteller. So it's my favorite age to write for, and I hope I can keep doing it.
I love that, Allie. And I could definitely see that in your book. Yeah, I think that the middle grade age group, like Allie said, is just so enjoyable to be able to write for. And in life, I actually feel the most comfortable, I think, talking to 12-year-olds, sometimes more than adults. And, you know, I even sometimes still feel like I'm 12, you know, and so I feel like there's so much growth and discovery that happens within that little short snippet of time, that it's such a beautiful opportunity that we have to be able to write for children who are, you know, trying to find their voice or trying to figure out who they are. And what I love about middle grade is that it can talk about the harder topics that are realistic for kids, that, you know, kids go through such hard things at an early age, but it also brings levity and hope and humor, like Allie said, and just this wholesome quality that I feel like is missing in a lot of areas of the world, different industries and whatnot. And so I think middle grade just has, I don't know, just a great kind of opportunity to start conversations and bring families together, because so many of our books will be able to be read within families. You know, maybe it's story time or something read before bed. And so I think that it's just really sweet to be able to think that our books could be something that is shared between family members as well.
So for me, I think two reasons. I think one of the reasons I write middle grade is I perpetually feel like I'm 10 years old. I'm 47, but I feel like when people, like, I just feel like my 10-year-old self all the time. I mean, I'm sure I've learned lessons and things have happened, but at the core, I feel like my 10-year-old self. And when I think about that 10-year-old self, and also what I've witnessed in my own children and the children I've taught, is there's this shift that happens in the middle grade years. Whereas when you're younger, it's like very much putting things in a box and putting all the yellow ones here and the rectangle ones here. And then as you get older, it's like, what happens when things, you start to think about what happens when things don't fit into that box. And when things don't fit into categories, and you're first realizing that some of the most complicated things and important things in life are those things that don't fit into categories, and how you deal with that. So that's always interested me, which is why I write middle grade.
I think one of the most significant reasons I write middle grade is because when I was younger, what really sparked my love for reading, or in reading anything, it was kind of like a gateway, not a drug, but it was a gateway drug to actually being expanded into like the world of literature. So I think it's important to pull kids in to that space so they can gain, specifically for literacy and our literacy grades, and having all of those things in place, getting kids to love reading again. And we are competing with so much right now for kids' attention. There's so many options, a lot more than when I was younger. So I wanted to create something that they could lose themselves in and find joy and humor and laughter and feel all those feelings I got to feel when I was younger, but with characters that they could, that possibly identify with, because when I was younger, I didn't have any characters that I could identify with in books that were experiencing joy and happy things. Books. I'm sorry. I'm actually really excited to read some of I know this is going to sound like I'm plugging away at books, but I've read all of these authors' books here, and they're actually really great. And a couple of them have sequels coming out soon. So I'm really actually excited to read their next projects because they have made me laugh and cry and scared me and all the things. So I really am excited to read their books. And along with some of our other 2024 debuts, we have The Last Read Witch, the Lumbering Giant of Windy Hills. I'm reading that one, Windy Pines. I'm reading that one right now. Crucida and Los Mariachos. A lot of different things that I'm really excited to read. We have such a strong 2024 debut group. So there's a lot of really great things, and there's a Goodreads list of all the wonderful books we have coming on down the pipe.
Yes, I mean, basically, I'm just seconding everything that everybody else has said because I think you guys have really summed it up so succinctly and perfectly. But yeah, I mean, my takeaway as well of why I love writing for middle grade is just because, of course, like so many of us, that was when I did fall in love with reading, because I think that's when you start being able to make choices about what you want to read. You're not being given books anymore. You're making these active decisions. And it's also such an odd in-between stage as well. Like, you're not quite a kid. You're not quite an adult. You're like, what books should I be reading? What books do I want to read? Who am I? All of these big questions that I feel like I'm still grappling with now. And so I think because I quite like writing stories about strange in-between places, it kind of made sense that, of course, the people to explore these areas and to explore these feelings would be kids who are both in these places and in these places emotionally as well. And I know that's definitely the case for Kes, is that she's, trying to build that identity, trying to figure out where she fits into the world. And you can do it in these very strange, gooey, fun, magical ways. And, talking about books that I like that are in this category, absolutely seconding what Nishay was saying, is that I think everybody in the 2024 cohort also worth reading. The next one I've got on my list is Neda's book, because it is coming out so soon, and I got an email saying that my pre-order is on its way. So that's definitely what I'm going to be looking forward to soon.
Okay, sorry. I was so busy listening, I forgot to unmute myself. I want to ask some questions about the book specifically as well. So I want to start off with, in The Curse of Eelgrass Bog and Daughters of the Lamp, both of your books have a lot about the past and also like the secrets and the past, specifically family secrets as well, in the characters' past. And I wanted to know if you could both talk about what drew you to that theme specifically, and what secrets mean to your main characters. How did you balance the reveals of the past secrets and the past history throughout the drafting and editing process? Neda, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. I love this question because it's something I thought about a lot as I was writing Daughters of the Lamp. I think for me, one of the biggest inspirations when I was starting off shifting to becoming an author was reading Louis Sachar's Holes. And I just loved so much how there was this tie-in with the main character and his life right now, with sort of this ancestral curse that he had inherited. And it made me think so much about, just like, DNA, and we pass on eye color and hair color and all that stuff, we also sort of inherit our family's legacies and their triumphs and their failures and all of that. And I wanted to see what my main character, Sahara, would do with the knowledge of what had happened. And maybe not even the knowledge, but also just this feeling of that we all have of like, there were people that came before me. There were things that happened before me. But I wanted to see how she would honor her legacy, but also kind of make it her own, because I think that's important when we think about things that have happened in our family histories, because often we are the first ones in our families that sort of break a pattern that maybe didn't serve us well in the past. So how do we do that, but also honor where we come from? That was just something I really enjoyed exploring. How about you, Mary?
No, that's such a great way to put it. And I think I really identify with that as well, about just, I mean, in terms of breaking the pattern, like for me in my real life, me and my siblings are the first generation that did not grow up in England. So all of my family is in England, and we weren't very close to them because of the distance. So I have siblings, and my book is definitely about sibling relationships there and how that can feel, and also sort of feeling disconnected to this like wider family that you have. And as a kid who grew up reading mysteries, obviously I always really hoped I'd stumble across something really dastardly, and I haven't yet, but who knows. But I think that's just sort of this fun thing, is this the sense of mystery but also closeness, because we're so close to our families sometimes, and yet we can also feel very far apart. And I think that is something that I definitely explore in Eelgrass Bog. It was definitely a tricky thing to thread through, and I don't want to say too much, because this is definitely a book that relies a little bit on twists, and sometimes I go too far and I spoil it. But that is definitely something that I try to thread through, and something that is definitely the heart of Eelgrass Bog.
By the way, just a reminder, if anyone also has any questions, please drop them in the chat. When I was reading Free Period and Olivetti, they reminded me a lot of family support and sort of the ways that family can support us, but also not understand us at the same time. So I'd love to know if you could tell me, or tell us, actually, all of us, about your main character's family and how you created these sort of side character relationships. How did you manage their relationships with their family as the book progresses? Allie M., do you want to start?
Yes, that's perfect. So the main family in Olivetti, they are a family of 6, the Brindles. They're very busy, loud, but they're also kind of living in the aftermath of a hardship. And so one thing I really liked exploring in my book Olivetti was how even when a family can go through the same things, different members often cope in very contrasting ways. And sometimes this can leave people feeling isolated, or maybe as if their feelings aren't valid, or that their feelings are maybe wrong. And so that's definitely something that my main character, Ernest, who's 12, he's experiencing this, of where he has already felt like he doesn't fit in with his family at all, because he's much more quiet. He'd rather just stay home alone reading his dictionaries. But the way he's been handling the struggle that his family has gone through is just different than the rest of his siblings and his parents as well. And so I really wanted my book to be a place for readers who've experienced that and felt like maybe they weren't seen or understood in what they were experiencing and what they were feeling. And so it was really interesting to see, kind of as I wrote the story, how, Ernest's relationship with his family was such a big source of conflict, but it was also the main source of growth in his character, as he was able to open up and realize, even though they are so different, and there was so many times where he felt like he was the only one feeling how he was feeling, that the moment that he did open himself up and allow people to understand him, he finally got what he was looking for, which is just to be heard and to be seen and valued. And so that was really kind of the core in Olivetti. And also it was just fun to kind of write about what the family had gone through and the ways they'd changed through the perspective of a typewriter, who's just been sitting, kind of watching, who's recorded all of their memories, has seen the ways they've changed over the years, and then is trying to remind them of what is most important. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed getting to write about that. And Allie?
I love hearing all that, but I love your book so much. Um, so yeah, the main characters in Free Period are a little different. They're absolute chaos monsters. They're not born do-gooders, and the way they find their way to the period equity issue is actually because they're punished. Their principal orders them to care about something for a prank gone horribly wrong. So kind of like all of the adults in their life have written them off, and even within their families. Their parents can't really get beyond the lore that they've created around their children. So there's two main characters. One is Helen, and her parents see her as kind of like a brilliant maniac who needs to be controlled. And Gracie's parents kind of see her as this like emotional dreamer who can't follow through on anything. And at one point during the book, she actually says, like, how are we supposed to have a real conversation when you're holding unfinished art projects from when I was 7 against me? And as I was thinking about this today, I realized like I was just doing that same thing as a parent this week. So it's a real challenge, I think, for us when our kids are ready to change and move on. Like as adults, can we give them not only the trust that they're going to do it, but also the grace, for them to make mistakes as they're changing. So in this book, both girls really have to stand up to their parents in different ways to show them like, I realize I've messed up before and you might not believe me, but you have to give me some room to try to be a different person, to become the me that I want to be. And I feel like we have a challenge as adults to let kids do that. And again, I hope that that's something where like if kids are going through that themselves in real life, it'll help to see it happen in a book.
And in Courtesy of Cupid, I love how there's this rivalry, but there's also the Cupid figure as well. And so I want to know, how did you come up with the details of the rivalries and specifically also the memories which unfold on the page? Because I loved how it kind of, you see them in the present, but they have so many memories of the past that are coming in and, impacting them. So did you have to redraft their relationship and rivalry throughout the process, or did it kind of stay the same the whole time?
No, I definitely had to redraft. I think my favorite trope, one of my favorite tropes, is academic rivals to more, and enemies to more, or lovers. Like I love that trope in older adult novels. So I was trying to mold it so that it would fit for a middle grade audience. I did get a lot of feedback that I was too mean. There was just like, this is really, really mean. And I'm like, is it though? So I did do a lot of drafts where I was redrafting and making them both less mean to each other, even though it's just, I mean, middle schoolers are mean. I have one, so they are mean. But there was a lot of back and forth. It was like a tightrope balance because in my head, Trevor had always kind of wanted to be friends with Erin, and he had always admired her. And Erin is my main character, and she's the one who has the Cupid powers. And Erin's just kind of very single-mindedly like, I want to be the best. I want to subvert all these stereotypes about Black people in my area and what Black girls are supposed to be. I want to I want to cure colon cancer because that is what her grandmother died of. And she has all of these goals, and she really doesn't have any time for dealing with boys and their feelings. So she does grow eventually to realize the different types of relationships. And eventually she realizes that her and Trevor are really similar to each other. And they're like to quote Shrek, they're like onions, they have layers. So it develops that way. And a lot of times, and a lot of people will say this as writers, but I kind of let them do their own thing. I didn't know that they were going to do one thing, but it kind of just developed on the page. So I would want like, oh, I think you guys should do this. And they're like, nope, we're going to go a whole nother way. But yeah, it definitely started off too mean. So we had to tone it down a little bit where she wasn't as mean. And it was definitely Erin. Erin was the one who was meaner. Poor Trevor.
Yeah, I love a good rivalry, but I also love when it very clearly is like one who doesn't realize how serious the rivalry is and like who just wanted to be friends the whole time, and the other one is like the driving force behind the animosity between them. Um, I want to talk as well about the activism in Free Period, and I'd love for you to share, especially for those who haven't read and like those who haven't read the back. I don't know what it's called, but like the bit after the book between the book and the acknowledgments, about the inspiration and how you infused activism throughout your story.
Yeah, so my inspiration originally was I had so much shame and pain about my period as a child that I didn't know how I was going to talk about it positively as a parent. And for anyone out there who might be on a different path in this, these conversations happen light years before you expect them to. So I wanted to write something positive, and I kept coming back to humor is what got me through these issues in my life. Friends that you could laugh with about these issues without being the butt of the joke. And so I started researching, and what I found was that there was this incredible movement in the country led by students, led by children, about their need for period products and that they had a right to these products so that they could attend school. And just tell you how long publishing takes, this started about like 10 years ago. And back then, what I found was it was a lot of Girl Scout troops who were out in front, on this corner, on the street, like on sidewalks, collecting pads for drives, getting people to talk about this issue. Then I saw New York City had the first pilot program, I think, to do this in schools. And then when I sold the book in 2021, I think 5 states either had some funding or state law requirements for products in schools. And now when the book is going to be published, we're going to have around half the states in America having either some funding or some requirements for pads in some bathrooms. Now, I'm sure you can tell, again, lots of sums. It's not perfect, right? There's a long way to go, but I hope that kids can look at this movement and see that student-led action can really change lives in our country. And it might not happen for you. It might be for the students who are to come. But you, by standing up and saying what's right and saying what you need, you can change the lives of kids all around the country for generations to come. And in this book, what I wanted to do is also show that that doesn't have to be something fancy or formal or that you need some clear expert roadmap for. You can just stand up and say what you believe. You can use whatever you're already loving in life, like making weird crafts, to create change. And I really hope that kids reading this book will take that out into the world, whether it's on period equity or another issue that they care about.
Lily, is it okay if I just piggyback on Allie's? I wanted to tell a story. Yesterday, I was at a volleyball tournament for 11 and 12-year-old girls. There must have been 200 girls. And we, somebody who was working the sort of cafeteria came running, and she was like, "Oh my God, does anybody have, a maxi pad or a tampon?" She was like, "My coworker, the line is like slammed. There's so many people, but my coworker's stuck in the bathroom because she just got her period." And you could just see all the women like searching their bags and remembering what it was like to be younger and be in that situation. And I wish I was talking left and right about Allie's book, but I wish I had bookmarks to pass out because it's so important. We can all remember being caught off guard. And here you are at a tournament where there's girls who may be getting their periods for the first time, or their schedules aren't regular, so they haven't prepared. And it's like, how could we be somewhere where the bathroom doesn't provide those things? So I think Allie T's book is just so relevant right now. And I'm so happy that it's coming out because it's so important.
Yeah, definitely echoing that. That's why I wanted to make sure to ask that question as well. And then for the rest of you all have some sort of speculative element or speculative piece of your story in your books. So I would love to know from the rest of you all how you navigated, explored, explained speculative elements, fantasy, magic in your books. So Nishay, do you want to start?
Sure. I am definitely terrified of high fantasy. I have nothing but like the utmost respect for people who can create entire universes and political systems and all these things. I personally cannot, which is why I have a very small touch of magic in my books. So I usually like go straight for, I like magical realism, but I like it to be grounded in reality. I think what I really wanted for my books is exploring the concept of having Black girl magic, but actually personifying that into an actual thing. So, Erin Johnson is the definition of Black girl magic because she has magic. I was watching Sabrina one day and I was like, man, I really love I love this series and I love how it makes me feel. And I kind of wanted my book to feel like that kind of the way I felt when I watched and clarify, not Sabrina on Netflix, Sabrina with Melissa Joan Hart. So yeah, my book is not scary. Like that's not the big, but yeah, I wanted that kind of influence, and I just thought I was like, there are a lot of books about Greek mythology, but not a whole ton on Cupid. Apparently, me and 3 other people on the same day, on January 2nd, all got the idea to have Cupid in our titles. It was a very significant day for Cupid books. But yeah, that was one of the reasons. It's like, this ties in with middle grade rom-com, this ties in with love, and it kind of just, all the pieces kind of fit together.
Mary, do you want to go next?
Oh yes, sorry about that. I realized that I've switched from my laptop to my phone, so now I'm in a different position in the order. But so sorry about that. But yes, I mean I love magic in books. And Eelgrass book is sort of, see, it's almost contemporary fantasy. It's not quite a second world one. But I just wanted to have a book that explored all sort of the strange, odd things that can exist, in the world as well. Because I was definitely look at this sort of kid where you go around and you find things and you go, this stick might be a unicorn horn, or I wonder what these footprints came from. And I think just sort of that everyday magic is something that has always made me want to write. And in this book, I really am just sort of playing around with the question is, what if these things were also real? And what if there was a natural world? And what if there were strange things lurking on the bog? And what would that look like? So definitely that sort of bridge and that blurriness between magic and reality is something that I love to read about and also something I love to write about.
Yes, definitely echoing what Nishay and Mary said about there's something so special about magical realism because it allows you to question whether or not there can, you can find magic in everyday ordinary things. And I think there's especially a lot of magic to be found in the question of what if. And so my book, kind of the whole magical speculative element in Olivetti is based on the question, what if a typewriter could type back? And so how I kind of, stumbled upon this idea was just typing on my own typewriter and wondering who else has typed on these keys and what other stories and secrets has this typewriter heard? And I almost felt like my typewriter was wanting to tell me, it had had a lot to share. And so I just loved getting to explore and kind of tap into the mind of a typewriter and what it might feel like to protect memories and hold the stories of humans and to want to have a voice but never have been able to share the words that you've held for decades. And so I found so much magic just within that one question and wondering what would this typewriter be like? What would his personality be like? And how would he view the world? And so now I definitely can't pass by a typewriter in public without wanting to have a conversation with it, because through this process, typewriters, they just really came to life for me. And I hope the same can be said for readers, and that they find kind of this magical connection with these old machines that already have, so much character and charm just on their own.
I love what everybody is saying about everyday magic, because I feel like also in Daughters of the Lamp, that was something that for me, there's a lot of magic that's happening, like flying carpets, all this stuff that's like amazing. But at the same time, it's like that magic for me had to serve the story and the character and allow me to explore the magic in everyday life, in her relationship, her newfound relationships with her family members in Egypt, in the existing relationships she has with her aunt and uncle. And just, it was interesting to have this character who's very much unlike me. I was like, bring on all the magic as a kid, bring it on, like wishing wells, all of that. I loved all that stuff. And Sahara's so different than me in that she needs an explanation for everything. And magic is one of those things that you can't explain. And it's like, how do you allow those beautiful and messy things in life to enter and appreciate them and experience them and not shy away from them, because they can be scary too.
I would love to remind you all, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. I'm going to continue on with my questions. I would love to know if there have been some unexpected joys of the book journey, so things that you weren't expecting. Mary, do you want to start?
Yes. So, and I think this is something that a couple of people touched on when we were talking about why write for middle grade. But for me, like the absolute best moment of this was when I got my first comment from like a kid reader who was like, "Hey, I really enjoyed your book." I was like, "Oh my God, there are real children I don't know who are reading this book. This is so cool." And actually, Nashay sent me a picture the other day of just like, here's a student who is reading your book. And like, I just like started crying because it just made it all feel so much realer. And I think I sort of knew, I say it was unexpected. Like, I think we all sort of know this is going to be one of the most wonderful joys about putting books out there into the world. But I don't think I was quite prepared for like just how wonderful it is and just how validating it is. All of the trials, all the tribulations, how long it takes, all these, reviews that you get and the doubt that you have in yourself. At the end of the day, like having a kid read your book and say, I saw myself in this, I really enjoyed this, like that's fuel for years. So definitely kid readers.
That's beautiful, Mary. I love that so much. And I could totally see why kids would just feel so seen in your characters as well. I agree that it's such an unexpected joy when somebody points out something in your book that you didn't even realize, or they're able to see something about your character. I love how they said this, or I love how you brought those two things together, and it never really even crossed your mind, because as writers, sometimes we feel like it's the characters who are saying it. It's not us. They're the ones, calling the shots and making the decisions. And so it's just such a sweet, rewarding thing when, like Mary said, readers are understood and they see themselves within the characters that you've written about, and that they're able to see the beauty in the meaning in your words, even if sometimes it could be just a simple sentence that you might not have thought much about, but it speaks directly into what a reader might be feeling or experiencing. And so it's just such a pleasure to be able to have that relationship with readers all across, the country and hopefully the world one day for all of us. So yeah, it's definitely such a delight.
Yeah, I would echo that too. I just did a few school visits last week, and I think the part that was unexpected for me, although I had thought about it, but I guess I just didn't feel it until this little kid said this to me, is even though this explores 12-year-old Egyptian American Sahara, it will resonate with kids who, are first generation American, no matter what the culture. And I know, like, Mexi Kid is one of my favorite books that I have read this year. And it's about the Mexican American first generation experience. And I was talking about my book, and we did like a craft workshop where kids came up with plot. And I was going around asking the kids, and one of the kids said, yes, I'm going to set my story in a world where it's this character, and then she goes to visit Mexico. And I looked at her and I said, oh, is your family from Mexico? And just her face completely lit up. And that was the biggest joy for me to realize that talking about my book and the experience of the main character and my inspiration for it had opened this pathway for her to think, well, I could write a story about my experience too, and where I come from. And to me, that was just everything.
So I feel like in publishing, we're always asking people to do things like, please sign me up, buy my book, edit my book. And so it's been really wonderful to hear these kind of like, thank you for writing the book. It's like a reminder that you've created something, that you could offer something to the world. And probably the most unexpected for me was hearing adults who have thanked me for the book, for their reading in their own right. As someone who goes around screaming about uteruses all the time, sometimes I can forget, like a lot of people have told me they don't talk about periods outside of their gynecologist's office. They really don't feel comfortable. And that they found like the experience of being seen and laughing in this book to be empowering for them. So that's been a really incredible experience that I did not anticipate at all.
So I'm gonna echo everybody. The best thing about like the undiscovered joy is the children reading, but I think I knew that was going to be a part of what I really loved about writing children's books. I think for me, one of the most unexpected things is how supportive our group is, and how honestly, I actually think I found friends, and I really love that we're all very supportive of each other. And it feels like I found my people, because I do have friends. I have friends out like real life, like I meet new people. I'm awkward, guys. I'm sorry. But I mean, this is different. When I first sent my manuscript off to an agent, I kind of just sent it off willy-nilly without knowing what a beta reader was or anything else. So this has been my first real foray into having a group of like-minded people who share ideas and support each other unequivocally. And I was not expecting that, and it's so wonderful. It's actually truly a beautiful thing.
I would love to know if you could go back in time and talk to yourself as a middle grade age group person. I don't know how to phrase that, but as a middle grader, I guess, what would you say? Allie, do you want to start? Because I feel like that's reminding me of this question.
So this one is very specific. I would tell myself to learn to spell, because I refuse to learn to spell, and it has lifelong ramifications. And the other thing is, I would tell myself, you deserve medical care. You deserve to be healthy and not in pain. And you might as well start talking up now, because you're going to have to be speaking up for yourself your whole life.
I would give myself the lottery numbers, obviously, from that time period. I feel like that would give me, I can quit my day job and I can write full time. I would also tell myself, as a little girl who was very convinced, who had immigrant parents, and a lot of high pressure to go to law school or become an engineer, become all these things. I guess I would tell myself that your work isn't necessarily tied up in parental expectations, and that art is meaningful too. Creating art and creating stories is also a necessary skill to have in the world. I guess I would tell my younger self that.
Yeah, I think if I went back as well, I'd obviously, do the lottery numbers, do the don't wear this, all of that. But I think as well, just like embrace your weird, which my 12-year-old self would probably roll her eyes at and be like, haven't had that before. But it's so true because I think, you try so hard to fit in and you try so hard to just like temper the things down that you really enjoy. And like so much of what I've been able to do that I have enjoyed now as an adult has been embracing that weird, has been writing these strange stories and exploring these parts of myself that, that I thought I couldn't talk about or that I thought, people wouldn't want to listen to either. So I think, think about the monsters, think about, the weird, all the weird, wonderful things in the world. See, this is me being my turn to be awkward now on a panel. But 12-year-old me was like this, but so much worse. And so I think it would be really useful for her to hear that actually embracing all of this and just being like, yep, this is you, will lead to, your biggest dream coming true.
Well, I wish you were my friend when I was 12, Mary, because I would have loved to hear that too. And that's kind of exactly what I was going to say as well, is just don't be afraid to chase what makes you different, and not having to feel this pressure to fit any kind of sort of mold or follow the same path that everyone else before you has kind of gone on, but actually getting to embrace your uniqueness and taking risks and not being afraid to do something that looks, far different than somebody else's decisions or lifestyle. And let's see. Oh, yes. And then also just that I am enough, I'm enough despite what other people say, despite what I do, despite how I look. I'm enough inside.
Yeah, I think I would echo everybody's sort of wanting to go back and tell themselves who you are is perfectly Mary or perfectly Allie M or perfectly Netta, or perfectly Nashay, perfectly Allie T. And I think I would tell myself to relax, to chill out, to just, life is okay, and to slow my roll a bit and not worry so much and just kind of stay in the moment. As a kid, you're constantly thinking about what's going to happen. What am I going to be when I grow up? And I miss being a kid as a 47-year-old. So I wish I had taken the time to be in it more. But I guess it's, part of the process of being 10 is looking forward. And part of the process of being 47 is looking back. So just kind of enjoying the stage that you're at.
So I know that we're coming towards the end of our panel, and so this might be a funny choice to make, but I want to ask now if you could all talk us through your book inspiration and journey to publication or until now, which seems like something that you would start off with, but I want to sort of start to end cap or like bookend our panel by going back to the beginning. Nashay, do you want to start?
Sure. So I'll start with, I went to, my undergraduate is in creative writing. So I spent a lot of time believing that I was going to be the next American great novelist, and I was going to be the next Toni Morrison. I was going to write some great literary piece of fiction. And mostly I was told for a very long time that children's fiction and young adult fiction wasn't what it first off, it doesn't take much to do. People just throw it together. Any type of genre fiction, it's really not important and all these different things. So I had to unlearn a lot of things leaving college. But when I did, I kind of went out and I wrote. It was during the pandemic, and I wrote. I was like, I am miserable, as everybody, the whole world was, but I wanted to write something that was joyful and brought me joy, and I did. So I wrote a manuscript, just threw it together, very little editing. It's really embarrassing to look at now, but it did get me my agent. She did. She saw the potential. And I'll always be grateful for that, because baby writer Nashay was not that. It was a mess. But I did get my agent with my first manuscript, but it did not sell. We went on sub, and we got a lot of great feedback about my voice, but the manuscript didn't sell for a number of reasons. None of them like concrete, just a bunch of different reasons. So in 2021, well, actually, in the beginning of 2021, I decided to sit down and write Courtesy of Cupid with a lot more knowledge under my belt, and I wrote that in 3 months. And then I edited it back and forth. My agent is very editorial. And then we went out on sub, and about 2 weeks later, we had a preempt offer with Simon & Schuster, Aladdin. Am I going further than that?
You can if you want, or you could go until now, like until release / post release.
January 2nd it released. I'm still in a haze because this is also very much because of Courtesy of Cupid, just because of the nature of the book. This is very much a really like a lot going on this month because of it being a Valentine's Day book. So yeah, it's out in the world. It's exciting. I'm gonna mute now, but I feel like I did a good job. All right.
You did an amazing job, and it is so exciting. No, I actually really relate to what you were saying as well about being in a creative writing undergrad and being told that children's literature is kind of either lesser than or just like the easy cop-out thing to do. Because I definitely started writing my first middle grade novel whilst I was doing my undergrad as well. And that was definitely the impression that I got from people. But I was really lucky that with that manuscript, I was able to get into Author Mentor Match, AMM, which was a mentorship program that ran for a few years and unfortunately isn't around anymore. But I was picked by Heather Kastner. She was my mentor, and she is an incredible author. She wrote The Bone Garden, Forest of Stars, Plentiful Darkness, and she really was the person who kind of boosted my confidence and kind of made me feel validated in telling these spooky, strange middle grade stories. So I owe so much to her and just the AMM community at large as well. And she taught me what it meant to query. We put together a query list, and this was back in 2018. And it's about 6 months of querying, but I found my agent through that. We had multiple offers, which was insane. After I think so long, you're always like, oh my God, wait, really? Multiple people want this? But I will say as well, for anybody who might be watching, like I think 2018 was a different querying landscape for sure. So I signed with Kelly Sonic at ABLA. And we did lots of revisions with that as well. She is also a very editorial agent. We went on sub, and when they say sub was a roller coaster, we had somebody try and take it to acquisitions twice. Both times got shut down. We had an editor offer an R&R who later left the business. It was just like this. And I think to keep myself sane, I started writing Eelgrass Bog in the meantime, between all of these sort of waiting periods.
And after we'd been on sub about a year, I sent my agent what I had for Eelgrasbog, and I was like, hey, I've been writing this strange story to make myself not sad. What do you think about this? And she's like, oh, we're actually going to switch gears now. So at the end of the day, my first book, it did not end up selling. I'm very hopeful that one day it will. But we basically pivoted and we focused on Eelgrasbog and editing that. And then that one was on sub for about 6 weeks, which felt like forever, but compared to a year, it really wasn't. And yeah, it ended up going to auction, which was the craziest day of my life. I was at work and I worked at like a boat rental place, and I used to go and like happy cry in the change rooms and then like go back and deal with customers. Like, you don't know, my book has just gone to auction. But anyway, crazy. So it did find a home with Penguin Kids with Razorbill, which is now Putnam. So I'm kind of like half in print sibs with Netta, I suppose. And like Nishay said, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. Came out on January 2nd. Yeah, every time I walk into a bookstore and see it on the shelf, it's still a bit of a jump scare, I've got to admit, but like the best kind of jump scare.
I think it's been really sweet to walk into bookstores and see Nishay and Mary, your books as well. That's always so fun. I'm like, I know them. Those are my friends. So that's sweet. So I never, went to school for writing or anything like that, but I definitely have just been writing since I was a kid. I'm sure everyone here probably can relate to that, and just finding an escape in stories. And so kind of around the time I started taking writing really seriously was, I think, back in 2018, where I had a finished book and I didn't know what to do with it. I, brought it to a friend who had gotten published before, and I just asked, what do I do with this? And she, taught me what querying was like. And it is very laughable, just looking back now at that manuscript and just how I knew nothing at all other than I just want this book to be in on shelves and in the hands of kids. And that's kind of all I really cared about. So I definitely just went for it without knowing what I was getting myself into, which definitely amounted to tons of rejections. I had like a rejection collection where I would, every time I got a rejection from a literary agent, I would make a piece of art, write like a little doodle or a poem and hang it up in my room. And so I had a full wall of all these rejections. And that was kind of my way of still creating art, even when people were telling me my art wasn't good enough. So anyways, it was a long road of, multiple books that I was trying to query and just figuring out, how does this world even work? And along the way, my husband gifted me a typewriter to just encourage me along. And so that's kind of where the idea for Olivetti was sparked. And so that idea just really took shape kind of quickly. And then through that book, I was able to land an amazing agent named Kristen Tourette at Martin Literary Management. And we sent my book out it was a little over a year ago today, actually, that we sent my book out on submission, and it was on sub for 4 days, and then got multiple offers, which was really crazy. Like you said, Mary, just coming from a season of waiting for so long and only being used to people rejecting you and, saying you're not a good fit for our list. And then having multiple people kind of fighting over your work is something I will never be able to grasp. I still can't fully process what happened. And so, yeah, I was able to get a 2-book deal with Macmillan, with just a dream editor at Fywell and Friends. And so that's just kind of been a whirlwind the past year. It's all happened in a very short time frame. My book pub date actually got moved up a year because they wanted it out earlier, which meant I had to write my second book in 4 months, which was really crazy as well. And then shortly after that, I had the just wonderful opportunity to land a picture book deal as well, a 2-book deal for picture books, kind of through sending Olivetti out on submission. I was able to make relationships with other editors who really liked my work. So that was just a really sweet blessing to get to work with, an editor that I had to pass on. And it was, just weird being on the other side of things and having to tell someone no. And that was the thing that made me cry the most, because I was like, I know how this feels. Like, I don't want to turn this person down, but I'm thankful that now we get to work together on our picture book. So yeah, Olivetti comes out on March 26th. So still a little over a month away, but I'm very excited.
So for me, I did not pursue writing in college. I was a teacher for many, many years, and my publication journey started later in life at the age of 40 when we moved cross country from DC to LA, which was so hard because we were leaving behind friends and family, our home, which we loved. And also for me, I was teaching at a school that I adored. And when we got to LA, I took some time off because my youngest was 4 years old, and I wanted to just help her settle in. And when she was in preschool and my older one was in 5th grade and my husband was at work, I was like, what do I do now with myself? And it had been a long time since I asked that question, because my life was following this trajectory that all of a sudden it wasn't anymore. And I did have to ask, what now? And what now sort of became what if. And I just remembered how much I enjoyed writing as a kid and how that was my way of expressing myself. When I had a hard day, I would go home, write, doodle, write a poem. It was something that I had teachers that encouraged me to do and always said that it was something that I was strong at. So I thought, well, how about I write a novel? I knew quickly that I wanted the character to be Egyptian American, since that was the perspective I had growing up. I didn't know much beyond that, other than it would probably contain some fantasy, because I loved reading fantasy as a kid. But I was a complete beginner. I was a good writer, but I didn't know how to write a kid's novel. So I had to take courses, like just craft courses, make friends at an older age. And I've made some of my best friends. I am part of a writing group called the Magpies, who have become my family. And I really needed them. I like what people said, like, find your people, find your group. We all have connections, but I remember getting my first rejection when I queried, and it was like clear that my husband empathized with me, but he didn't really get what it was like. And other writers get what it's like to put your work out there and to get a rejection. And it's so important to have people to go to when you're having hard days, but also to have people celebrate you when you're having good days. So it took me about 2 years to write, or a year to research the folklore that I wanted to incorporate, a year to draft it. And what I was seeing on paper wasn't what I was envisioning in my head. So when I did like this quick query after I had drafted it and sort of edited it for to me, that was editing. Like, you edit it for punctuation and grammar, and it looks good. There are no errors, but I wasn't editing like the big picture stuff or the plot. So of course it did not. I had gotten some nice feedback, but it was all like, sort of query me later kind of stuff. So I knew that I needed support and I needed help. And I was lucky enough to be part of Author Mentor Match as well, like Mary, sort of one of the last years they did it. And my mentor just helped me sort of close that gap between what was on paper and what I was envisioning in my head. And I took a long time to revise. Give yourself time to revise. It took me about 9 months to revise. And after I queried, I got a lot of interest in it. And it's hard to navigate that, as people have said, but also like for the other writers who are out there, it's not necessarily like the biggest agency or the biggest name. Like for me, when I had gotten a few offers, it was the agent that really understood my book that I went with, because the way she talked about my book, I was like, oh my gosh, this is how I want her to talk to editors. And she really understood what I was trying to do. And we were lucky. We found a great editor at Putnam Young Readers who is Mexican American and really understands the heart of the story, and loved some of the things that other people had asked me to get rid of, like the other viewpoint, and really celebrated that. So I signed a 2-book deal, and like Allie M, it had taken me so long to write the first one. Then all of a sudden I was like, they were like, we want the second one to come out on the heels of the first one so that kids who enjoy it don't have to wait long for the sequel. And I had always thought of it as a series. So luckily I kind of knew the big picture plot, but it was a lot to write to deadline. It's definitely a different experience. But I had tools, which I didn't have the first time around. So now Daughters of the Lamp comes out February 20th. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited and nervous. It's totally like the roller coaster feeling, like, yay, but I'm going to throw up kind of feeling. And yeah, that's where I'm at in the journey. It's all, it's the genie's coming out of the bottle, so to speak, and I can't put it back in because my words are out there and people are either going to love it or they're not going to love it. And I'm just so happy to be part of this group. I get so excited when I hear news about reviews that they've gotten, or seeing Mary and the Shays books in bookstores. It's really nice to be surrounded by this group.
I'll just talk about the back end a little bit because I don't know if we've talked about that much. So I sold my book, like I said, in 2021. So it was the end of the summer 2021. It will not be published until spring 2024. That's a long time in like regular human years. In publishing, it's like not that abnormal. These things happen. And so I wanted to share that just in case anybody else ends up on that same kind of journey, because it was originally supposed to be published in 2023 in the fall. And that seemed long. That was over 2 years. That seemed long to me too. And then it got pushed. And this happens to a lot of authors. So like I said, I just want to share in case this happens to anyone else. I panicked. I really worried about what was going to happen for the book, for me as an author, career-wise and everything. And my agent at the time and my editor and everyone was like, it'll be okay. And it turned out that I think it was actually the best thing that could have happened for the book, because it gave it some space within the publisher to build momentum, gave my editor some room to build support behind the book. And what's happened in that, instead of being part of maybe a crowded fall 23 field, it's now become a lead title for Scholastic in the spring. And they've actually sent me to a number of conferences all over the country to talk to booksellers, school librarians, and teachers about the book. And it has led to Scholastic being out in front as one of the biggest publishers of children's literature in the world, being out in front talking about periods to all of these different people. So if anyone else is out there and you get delayed, I don't know if it will happen like this, but if you can try to work with your editor and agent and find that silver lining, find what good can come from the delay. I hope that you can have an experience like that too.
Yes, and to echo what everyone else has been saying as well, I've put the links for everyone's books in the description box below the panel. So definitely go make sure to buy the ones that are already out and pre-order everyone's that has not come out yet. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you to the lovely authors who have taken pity on my questions and have answered them for you all. And I hope everyone has a really great rest of your day and rest of your 2024 reading year.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Lily.
Lily.
Bye, everybody.